YouView, channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight, 8 till 11, all of your favourite items. We've got my big opinion monologue, we've got the big question, my take at 10, and the papers live and uninterrupted at 10:20. 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. But we kick off, as always on a Saturday, with the People's Hour, in which I take your video calls on the big stories of the day. So tonight we'll be debating, should MPs have second jobs? Are they underpaid, as Gary Lineker has suggested? Also, should the law be tougher on people who litter the streets? And should what you do online affect your job? Lots to get through. A big 3 hours, but first the headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. A 7-year-old girl is in life-threatening condition in hospital after a suspected drive-by shooting in North London. A total of 6 people have been injured in the attack, which happened outside a funeral in Camden. 4 women aged 21, 41, 48 and 54 are being treated in hospital. The 48-year-old has suffered potentially life-changing injuries. A second child aged 12 was taken to hospital but has since been released. Police are appealing for any witnesses and say no arrests have yet been made. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British-Iranian national accused of spying. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak described the killing of Ali Reza Akbari as callous and cowardly. Iran's state media is reporting the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, which is accusing Britain of meddling in their national security. But Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the government will temporarily withdraw its ambassador from Iran and that they're considering further action against Tehran.
When I found out earlier this morning from the officials in Tehran that this had taken place, of course I was filled with a revulsion that I think any reasonable person would have. That is why we have taken this decisive action. That is why we've made it clear that our response will not necessarily be limited to the measures that we have announced today. We take this incredibly seriously.
At least 5 people have been killed after a Russian missile strike hit an apartment building in central Ukraine. Dnipro's regional governor says at least 27 people, including 6 children, were injured in the attack, with more people still trapped under the rubble. Moscow's missiles also hit vital energy facilities across Ukraine today. Rishi Sunak has pledged to supply British battle tanks to Ukraine to help the country retake territory lost to Russia. US President Joe Biden's legal team says they've found an additional 5 pages of documents marked as classified at his home in Delaware. Earlier this week, his team found other classified documents at his home and in his garage from his time as vice president during Obama's administration. The US Attorney General has appointed a special counsel to investigate the matter. And back in the UK, nursing strikes have been paused in Scotland after talks between the First Minister and the Royal College of Nursing. Negotiations will continue next week with the aim of reaching a deal by the end of February. The Scottish Government is also pledging to match any NHS pay increase in England if it's higher. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
My thanks to Bethany, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight on a Saturday night, 8 till 11. We start with the People's Hour, in which I'll be taking your video calls on the big stories of the day. Tonight, the stars of the show are Sue in Cheshire, Norma in Gran Canaria. Lucky Norma. There she is, rocking a lovely suntan. I'm enjoying the foliage behind you. We've got Lars in Windsor, just down the road from the castle. And we've got Adik in Medway. Good to have you back. There you go. Finally, someone that's actually dressed up to be on TV. We've got Fergus in Greenwich, rocking the GB News mug. Looking good, Fergus. And last but not least, we've got actually, we'll get to the others later because there's so much to get through, folks. The topics we'll be debating tonight are with Westminster accounts publications showing some MPs are earning eye-watering amounts from side gigs. I'll be asking, should MPs be allowed to have second jobs? Are they underpaid, as suggested by Gary Lineker today? Also, with reports of plans for a cash for litter scheme hitting the press, I want to know, should the law be tougher on people who throw their rubbish on the streets? And aspiring teachers are being asked to hand over their social media profiles to schools, including their dating app profiles. But should what we do online affect us at work? I'll find out what my viewers think in just a moment. My Saturday sidekick for the first hour of the show is professional dancer, entrepreneur and star of Strictly, Christina Rihanov. After 9 in my Big Opinion monologue, after a professional dog walker tragically dies whilst out with 8 dogs, this story reflects our consumerist society. My message is clear. Don't buy a dog if you can't walk it yourself. In the big question, with dating apps and quick hookups on the rise, I'll be asking, is romance dead? And we'll get the views of the Queen of US showbiz royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, on the very sad death of Elvis Presley's daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. Plus, William and Kate's first public appearance since Prince Harry's book hit the shelves, and it turns out they're more popular than ever. Plus, tomorrow's Sunday papers from 10:20, that's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. So this is Mark Dolan tonight. Put something cold and fizzy in the fridge or fire up the kettle and let's have a night to remember. Your video calls in just a moment, but first, my look back at the big week stories in Dolan's diary. It's time for my diary of the week, and over 50s could be exempt from income tax in a bid to tempt them back into the office after COVID. Now, our older citizens, in my view, are more disciplined, have more life experience, and are wiser than the younger population. They would be a great asset in any workplace, and we should encourage it. The grey pound might just save the British economy. A new poll suggests more than half of voters back Rishi Sunak's new minimum service law to limit strike action by paramedics and other key workers. Let me tell you a story. I witnessed a road traffic accident on Wednesday, pretty serious. A lovely NHS team of 3 brilliant female medics came along in a vehicle to help, but still no actual ambulance to take the injured to hospital. It was over an hour, no ambulance. Unforgivable in a supposedly wealthy and civilised country. The number of people dying as a result of not being able to get to hospital quickly is a growing national scandal. It wasn't helped on Wednesday by the fact that the ambulance workers were on strike. It's just not on. Meanwhile, I was out and about shopping in the supermarket this week, and I spotted this dreadful product. Take a look. Dettol antibacterial laundry sanitizer. What the hell is that? It boasts that it's got an additive which kills the COVID-19 virus and 99.9% of bacteria. This obsession with germs started during the pandemic, and we seem to have forgotten the fact that we need bugs to stay healthy. Do you remember the endless hand sanitizing early on in the pandemic? The authorities were obviously trying to save lives, I'll give you that, but it doesn't mean that history won't judge them as having been wholeheartedly and completely wrong. Now, don't stay at home with sniffles. Research from the Mail Online found that more than half the public thought people should go to work if they've got a cold. Praise the Lord. Common sense has broken out. Just before Christmas, I was on a packed train with people squeezed together, coughing and sneezing, not worrying about germs, and just back to normal life. It was absolute heaven. More of that in 2023, please. The cost of living crisis is so bad, Tesco is now having to lock up bacon and sausages, with premium meats being padlocked in fridges after an explosion in theft by hungry customers. There you go, another delightful legacy of willfully wrecking our economy for 3 years. Well done, everyone. A stark nationwide report reveals a generation of Brits will be locked out of the housing market. This is a big problem because if young people don't feel they have a stake in the economy, they may reject the very idea of capitalism altogether, potentially supporting a populist figure from the hard left like Jeremy Corbyn or worse, who would take us down the dangerous route of Marxism. You have been warned. Some good news, folks. And furious Vladimir Putin shows his rage at Russia's failing war efforts as he sacks a senior military leader whose nickname is General Armageddon. That's right, he's nicknamed General Armageddon. Well, this guy has been replaced with someone called Captain What the Hell Do We Do Now to get ourselves out of this horrible mess. Good luck, Vlad. Prince Harry says he's got enough material for another book. Some people are shocked, but I personally will be queuing up to buy it. It'll come in handy if there's another loo roll shortage. Meanwhile, King Charles enjoys unprecedented popularity as he visits Scotland and jokes with charity workers. Far from damaging the royal family, Harry's endless attacks from the luxury of his Californian mansion have served only to boost the monarchy. So, keep those attacks coming, Harry. And last but not least, do not disturb. An X-rated crew of 28 porn stars, that's right, 28 porn stars, booked into a travel lodge to film explicit scenes after being turfed out of a nearby hotel. Blimey, that's what I call room service. Would you like me to fluff up your pillows? And that was Dolan's diary. Now, reacting to the big stories of the week and helping me to take your video calls is the dancer and entrepreneur Christina Rihanov. And Christina, welcome to the show.
Hello, finally, in person, always on video links.
Exactly. So welcome to the studio. And actually, you reacted quite strongly there when I talked about the strikes, the nurses, the ambulance workers. Rishi Sunak planning a new law which means that essential workers cannot stop working. What's your view?
Such a hard topic, I think, because in my facilities where I teach yoga, we have a lot of nurses. We're very next to the Northampton General, and I see them every single day, overworked, stressed, absolutely, to the point that I just want to give them a hug. It's really sad to see them like that. I understand why they want to strike. I understand they need a better pay. I understand they need to have a better quality of life to provide for the children. Some of them single moms. They can't even afford childcare or anything like that on the pay they get from NHS. So I think there is a better care has to be provided for our nurses now, doctors, and those who provide these very important services to us. About the strikes, whether it's, right or wrong, I don't know. I think it's really sad to see that we're in the situation of people dying on the roads, if they've been in a car accident or something like that. Of course, ambulance should be right there, to help, like you said, and take patients to the hospital.
I think being in the military, being a police officer, being a nurse, driving an ambulance, I just think you're you're doing a job that does not allow you to actually stop working, because we're talking about human lives here, aren't we?
Absolutely, 100%. Perhaps it has to be better, better policies, how we look after those people. But yet, if you made a chance and took a chance to be in the services, perhaps, that kind of feeling that you're saving someone's life has to be ahead of everything else.
Too right. Can I talk to you about this product I found in the supermarket
yes.
this week? Dettol, okay, antibacterial laundry sanitizer. What the hell is that?
I have no idea. I've never seen that. But yet, I think we became over-obsessed with the germs. But remember, we're supposed to have them around us to actually build the immunity and fight the...
You mustn't say immunity. That will get you cancelled.
I know.
Conspiracy theorist.
There is such a thing as immunity, right?
They used to be 3 years ago.
Yes, 3 years ago.
Exactly.
Exactly. Now we're all coughing and puffing because if somebody sneezes next to us, we right away catch it because I think we all kind of sterilise.
Christina, you know this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist, but I can't imagine that it's good for our health to kill all of these bugs all the time. I didn't think that the hand sanitising was healthy because surely you risk creating superbugs. And now you're going to sanitise your laundry?
I'll never use it, and especially as a mom, obviously I have lots of laundry for the children, and I would never wash any of the stuff with this, because it's almost like a bleach or something like that. Yeah. It's just horrible, I think, and I don't think it's great for our skin. I don't think it's good for our environment.
A big story this week, I don't know if you caught it, the Conservative MP Andrew Bridgen, who has lost the Conservative whip, so he's no longer a Conservative MP, at least for the time being. And this is because he's been very vocal about the vaccine and vaccine side effects and harms. I think he made a mistake by quoting somebody in relation to the Holocaust, because I don't think that you should compare anything to the Holocaust, an appalling horror, one of the great crimes of history. However, I don't think he should apologise for raising a national conversation about the small but significant harms from the vaccine.
I also think that everybody still has their opinion and we can express that opinion. Like you said, perhaps the quote didn't help and it shouldn't be used in the content of history. But at the same time, why we cannot have an opposition of opinions? It is just, we live in a polarized world, and there's always going to be two opposite spectrums of every single conversation we're ever going to have. Obviously, a lot of people feel very, very strongly about the vaccines, and that's what he was doing. What's your view on that, really?
Look, I'm triple vaccinated, and the government are very clear that these vaccines are safe and effective, and of course, arguably the most tested vaccines in history. Billions of people have had it. What I object to is vaccine tyranny, the fact that care home workers lost their jobs for not having the jab. And the pressure on people to have the vaccine. And that's the conversation we need to have. That's the lesson we need to learn. And it's not unreasonable for Bridgen to raise the issue of the people who have been impacted by the vaccine. And that may be a tiny number, but those people exist and they deserve to be heard.
Of course, agree, 100%. I think exactly goes back to this fact that we can express our opinion about the vaccine and we shouldn't be punished for that in that nature.
Vladimir Putin is not happy. He has just sacked his senior military leader, General Armageddon. So
what a name.
Isn't it? It was Armageddon for him and his career. Do you think that 2023, this year, will see an end to that war?
Hope so, and we all hope that it's going to end, and as soon as possible, of course. Any of this news extremely sad. Indeed, and look, before we get into the calls, this shocking story: Tesco are having to use locks on the bacon. I can't believe that. When I've seen that, I just couldn't believe it. It's actually true. A padlock on your sausages. Yeah. Okay. But isn't it sad that we came to this? That people are so hungry that they start stealing, going to supermarkets, perhaps wanted to feed not actually themselves but their children, or I don't know, someone they look after at home, like grandparents. It is really, really sad that we have so many food banks now in our nation. And you have to actually log your ham and the sausages. I mean, this is terrible, really. Yeah, what I regret, and I understand the government were trying to save lives when they locked down, but there was no conversation about the human impact of economic damage. Of course. And here we are. Here we are.
Yeah. So, well, look, Christina, we've got lots of stories to get through, and I cannot wait to sink my teeth into them. Christina Rihanov is with us alongside my brilliant callers. And, well, let me tell you that the topics tonight are very, very lively indeed. Here we go. We have as follows. Should we get tougher on people that litter the streets? Do companies have a right to know what you get up to online? Is it okay for prospective employers to ask for your dating app details so they can have a look? Oh my goodness, I'm shocked. But first up, as a debate rages about whether MPs should be allowed to have second jobs, BBC presenter and ex-footballer Gary Lineker has told the press this week we would get better politicians if we paid them more. Are they underpaid? We'll discuss that next.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight and the People's Hour, in which I'm taking your video calls coming up between now and 9 o'clock. Should we be tougher on those who litter the streets? And do companies have a right to know what employees get up to online? There's talk of some employers asking for potential employees to send their Tinder profiles and other details about who they're dating. Surely that breaches their human rights. We'll discuss that shortly. But first, as a debate rages about whether MPs should be allowed to have second jobs, BBC presenter and ex-footballer Gary Lineker has told the press this week that we'd get better politicians if we paid them more. So, are they sufficiently remunerated? Are they within their rights to supplement their income? Or should they exist only to serve their constituents? Let's speak to Lars in Windsor. Hi, Lars.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Now, Lars, you look like a well-to-do man. You look like you've got about 8 jobs.
I have a few jobs, yes.
Oh, there you go. You see, I got that right. My middle-class radar was working. What do we think about this? Because I'm torn. I'm 50-50. On the one hand, I think they should be paid simply to focus on the needs of their constituents. On the other hand, I want to attract the best potential public representatives. And if you're a high flyer in a different industry, I think you've got a role to play in the House of Commons.
You do. I don't necessarily think having a second job is a problem, depending on what that job is. But I also think it ought to be controlled by the Parliamentary Standards Committee. You know, you'll have doctors who are members of Parliament who also need to maintain their general medical practice certificates. And of course, Mark, you're forgetting that you have MPs that are also presenters on GB News. So, you know, if you ban them from having jobs, you're going to have to find some new presenters.
Let's get Lars. Let's bring Christina into this if we can, because I'd love to hear what my presenter's friend thinks about this. Christina Rihanov, who is, of course, Strictly Star, a dancer and an entrepreneur as well. You've got a few jobs. Let's get everyone in on this if we can. I'd love to have Lars on the shot as well. Listen, Christina, what do you think about this? Are MPs underpaid?
The numbers I've read in that article are shocking. So much money on public appearances, talking about being politicians. I think I agree with Les. If this is the job which is completely different to what they do in Parliament, then fair play, because if the doctors or lawyers or anything of that nature. But I think if they're making money because they're elected by the public, I think in some kind of way, this money has to go back to the public because they elected them there. They now have a chance to make a lot of money and go around the world and do public appearances talking about Parliament.
Lars, I'm going to come back to you in just a moment, but Sue is with us now. So let's head over to Sue in Cheshire, who is one of my favourite contributors to the People's Hour. And Sue, great to see you again as well. You are a bookkeeper by trade, so you know about numbers. It's my view that MPs are underpaid, and I agree with Lineker, and I've never said that before. I think they should get a pay boost so that they don't need second jobs. What's your view?
I'm afraid this is one of the few things that I disagree with you about, Mark. I think they are well paid. £85,000 a year is quite a good salary. And I think you don't go into being an MP for earning loads of money. I think it's quite all right for them to have a second job, with caveats, providing they do their 35 to 40 hours a week for their constituents. Nobody works 24/7 for any employer. I think it should be very transparent. They should say how much they've had, who they've had it from, and how long they've worked to get that. I agree with Lars that, you know, doctors and nurses have to keep up their certificates and and lawyers the same, except when it's like somebody like Mr. Cox, who spends his time in the Virgin Islands and he's miles away from his constituents. I think he should not be doing that, and I don't think people should be going away to do I'm a celebrity, get me out of here either. I think you should spend your minimum hours working for your constituents.
Let's get Lars back on this if I can, Sue, and I'll come back to you, of course. Lars, the point is that we want to attract the brightest and the best. If you can't have a second job, it's going to be career politicians, isn't it? People that started as councillors and were student campaigners at the age of 16. They know nothing about business, nothing about the real world.
But we've already got career politicians in reality, because there are people like that. David Cameron was an ideal example of that. He was a researcher in the Conservative Research Department, became a member of Parliament, and then became the Prime Minister. People like that don't always have the experience from business. And actually, if you're in business, it's actually a pay cut for you, because if you're a director of a company and you're earning £120,000, you become a member of Parliament not because of the money, but because of the fact that you want to serve the public. But there's also the added thing is we had the expenses scandal a number of years ago. In America, they get paid a fixed amount, but that includes their office expenses. So there is an argument to say increase the salary, but don't let them claim expenses.
Yeah, that might be a solution. Sue, I felt sorry for MPs, and again, that's not something I say very often on this show, in relation to the scandal around MPs' expenses exposed by the Telegraph some years ago. And the reason why I felt sorry for them is that the House of Commons authority said, look, make as many claims as you like, because that is in lieu. That's the alternative to an actual pay rise. The House of Commons authorities said, look, the public won't swallow a pay rise, but we'll give you the pay rise via expenses. So there is a problem here.
Well, I agree with that. But then when IPSA came into being, they did get their massive pay rise in lieu of their expenses. And I can't understand why an organisation like IPSA can't get a grip on their expenses. I think they ought to get people in there who run businesses and run expenses for their staff, because if you're a member of staff for any other business in the private sector, you wouldn't get away with half what they get away with, or the amount of money they get for doing stuff. It's ridiculous. When I was in the bank, you know, you had to produce your receipts for everything. I mean, I was allowed to have extra jobs if I wanted, but as long as they didn't bring the bank into disrepute, and had no, you know, desire to be an escort, so that didn't bother me. But I think the expenses thing is a dangerous place for MPs, because I don't see why they get subsidised food or drink. I don't see why lords can get £300 or £400 just for turning up, signing a bit of paper, and then they can tip you off for the rest of the day. They should have to prove that they're there all the time. And if you haven't done a speech in the House of Parliament for 2 years or more, then I think you ought to get kicked out. You know,
I mean, look, it's a very important job, Sue, and you'll agree with that. I mean, Lars, let's have a look at the average size of a UK constituency. You're looking at 60, 70,000 people. That's a big responsibility. I think MPs should get 200 grand a year, give up their other jobs, as you say, give up the expenses, and let's have the brightest and the best. There are plenty of people, Lars, and you may be cognizant of these people out there who'd love to be MPs but can't afford to do that job.
Of course, some of this is down to the selection process of MPs as well. So it's not just a question of, we'll pay them more, we'll get better quality MPs. The political parties have got to be able to select the right candidates in the first place, because without the right candidates, you're not going to have the quality of people to sit in Parliament. And if you're going to pay them £200,000, you know, everybody will want the job because it's £200,000 to sit on the green benches. Although I have to say that MPs do work very hard. It's not a 35, 40 hour a week. I know MPs that have done 60, 70 hours a week because they come home on a Thursday and they're doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday in their constituency, dealing with the surgeries and all the other stuff that they have to deal with. And I'm not saying that that's not right. I'm saying they chose that job and they knew what they were going to have to do when they entered Parliament. They knew it was going to be a 60, 70 hour a week job. But I think there's a lot of people that don't understand actually the amount of hours that members of Parliament spend. And I'm not saying that all members of Parliament spend that amount of time, because there are lazy members of Parliament that will just do what's right. And the same as councillors, will only do what they need to do the job.
Indeed. Let's bring Christina Rihanov back into this conversation, and let's keep Sue and Lars if we can. And let me sort of ask you now collectively for a raise of the hands. Please raise your hand if you think MPs should be allowed to have a second job. OK. Oh, there you go. All right. So Lars and Sue are saying yes. Christina says no. And now let me go through each of you. First of all, Christina, how much do you think MPs should get paid per year? I'm saying 200,000 for every member of Parliament and £500,000 for the Prime Minister. Can you give me a figure of how much you think they should get paid?
If they don't have another job, then 200,000 is all right. But if they do, I think it should be less than that. It should be what it is now.
Interesting, good compromise. Lars, you're the Chief Ombudsman of the House of Commons. You're the Speaker. Can you give me a figure of how much MPs should be paid?
I would say 150.
OK, 150. And Sue, you are the accountant in the group. You've been crunching the numbers for your whole career. How much do you think they should be paid?
I wouldn't give them any more than 100,000 a year.
OK.
I mean, if you're a private, if you're a self-employed, you can work your 60 hours for a lot less than that.
Well, there you go. Sue says 100K. Sue, let me tell you, you are priceless. Thank you for your contribution, as is Lars. Lars, it turns out you're slightly in showbiz because you've got a podcast.
I have, yes, with your friend Linda Duberly.
Well, that's wonderful. I've got to say, I've listened to a couple of episodes. It's absolutely brilliant. It's called the Common Sense Podcast. Is that right?
Yes, Common Sense Politics Podcast.
There you go. Common Sense Politics, which we get from Lars every time he's on the People's Hour. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Lars. We'll catch you again soon. And, of course, Christina is staying with me because we've got lots more to get through. What do you think about companies asking potential employees what they get up to online? Is it any of their business what their Tinder profile looks like? But next, a very important question, a burning issue of the day. Should we have tougher rules against those who litter the streets? See you in 2.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the People's Hour, which is part of Mark Dolan tonight. Don't forget, after 9, all of your favourite elements, my big opinion monologue, my take at 10, and tomorrow's papers, live and uninterrupted from 10:20. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. But we start, as always, with your video calls. Coming up shortly, do companies have a right to know what you get up to online, as a potential employer has been asking potential employees for Tinder details, dating profiles and their Twitter handle? Surely that is a challenge to their privacy and free speech. But first, a cash for litter scheme could be launched in the next 2 years, in which members of the public are paid to return items like glass bottles, metal cans and plastic packaging. This news comes as the Keep Britain Tidy charity say the public are littering more than ever. So how do we best tackle this problem? Incentivise the public with a cash for litter scheme, or tough love with harder punishments for those who chuck litter on the street? Let's speak to Fergus in Greenwich. Hi, Fergus.
Hi there, Mark. Great
to have you back. How clean are the streets of Greenwich?
Actually, they're pretty good, I have to say. Not totally good, but pretty good. I say, forget the carbon zero. That's a joke. Litter zero. Let's have a litter zero policy. If you think of pop concerts and, funnily enough, eco events, when they're saying we must look after the planet, they go away and innocent people come along and clean the village green or clear a bridge. Now, my ex-father-in-law is a retired farmer in North Yorkshire, and they brought out a very strong rule, the local council, about even throwing a cigarette butt away, you'd be fined. And somebody he said, that's good. We don't want any of that rubbish in our streets of Northallerton, or Nally as they call it up there. And he was right. I've walked along the street and I've seen people finish a can of Coke or a bottle of water and they just throw it over their shoulder. And I think, do they do that at home? The scary thing is they probably do. Oh, you were just saying about taking bottles back. I remember as an early teenager in Paddington, I met some boys who said, let's collect the bottles, let's collect the bottles. And you'd walk around, you'd find the lemonade bottles, the Tizer bottles, the beer bottles. There was an episode of Hancock's Half Hour when he took bottles back to the wrong shop. That's not our beer, that's Longman's beer. And so I used to collect, literally carrier bags of bottles in the street, take them to the off licence and get paid 6p a bottle. Brilliant. You always used to put your milk bottles out, which were cleaned and reused. If you think of how many of these useless masks, which don't stop viruses at all, being dumped in the street, yeah, they don't work. I know.
Indeed so. I mean, I should say for the purposes of balance that there are plenty of scientists that believe the masks do make a difference, but you are entitled, Fergus, to your view. What we can agree on is that they are dreadful for the environment. Those masks, of course, not biodegradable and not recyclable. Let's bring, if we can, Norma into this conversation. Norma in Gran Canaria, which is in the Canary Islands. Norma, are you on holiday or do you live there?
No, I'm on holiday.
That's very nice. I went to Gran Canaria many years ago. I got gastroenteritis, and I think my vomit is still in one of those pools. Now, Norma, let's get down to business. What do you think about litter bugs? Should we get tough with them?
Well, I agree with your last commentator, really. I'm against being told what to do. I don't like being told what to do. I was against vaccine mandates. I was against masks, everything like that. But this is something that is really serious, and we have to do something about it. However, I'm not so sure about the carrot approach. You know, I do think that really we should be more severe. I agree with your last speaker.
Fergus, concentrate, for God's sakes. Is Norma boring you?
No, I was getting the stick to beat the people up. The carrot and the stick. I'm going to use the stick.
He's got a stick. He's not afraid to use it. Norma, carry on.
No, look, I live in Italy, and our part of Italy, there isn't a litter problem because they're really, really strict. I mean, let me confess to start with. I've never ever emptied a litter bin in my life. I mean, I just don't do things like that because I'm married to a wonderful bloke. He's my domestic goddess and he does all that. So I had to confer with him about what goes on. But anyway, I remember about 6 years ago, he was very stressed. And he was very stressed because suddenly Italy declared that all the bins, all the big bins that you have in the UK still, the wheelie bins, were all going to be done away with. And my husband was kind of like devastated, like, what am I going to do with the rubbish? And they said, instead, we're going to have these little tiny bins, and they're about 2 foot high, and they're little different colours, but very muted colours for different bits of refuse. And it happened very suddenly. It happened overnight. And everybody was up in arms because the Italians don't like being told what to do. But everybody was up in arms. The wheelie bins disappeared within 2 weeks, and suddenly these little bins arrived, and also accompanied by a law that if you didn't obey the law and you didn't put the right thing in the right bin at the right day, then you would be fined. And every single bin has a barcode on it, so they know what your refuse is and everything like that. And honestly, there was total outcry about it, total outcry. But everybody had to comply because there were such heavy fines attached to it. Now, 6 years later, I mean, it took a little bit of, it was a bit bumpy and a few people did get done for it. But 6 years later, the system works beautifully. And we have totally clean streets and we only have little bins, aesthetically pleasing. We don't have great big wheelie bins everywhere. We live in a medieval city, walled city, so everything is totally beautifully aesthetically pleasing. And there's no rubbish anywhere.
Lucky you.
And also, they're very strict about dog poo. So, for instance, you can't if you're seen to put dog poo in any of the refuse bins, that's prison. There's special bins for dog poo. So it's perfect. And we live virtually in a police state in Italy. But on this particular count, I agree with. I hated the vaccine mandate, hated it. That is what it's like to live in a repressive regime. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Norma, I agree with you. Amen to that. And I think I'm erring on your side of stick rather than carrot. I think tough love is the answer. Look, we've got no time left, but you're in Gran Canaria. You're on holiday. It's what, 9:45 right now?
Yeah.
Are you going to the beach? Are you going skinny dipping? Are you going to a bar, a nightclub, a discotheque? What's the plan, Norma?
Yeah, we are living on the beach. Yeah, and when I leave you now, I'm just going downstairs to our wonderful restaurant. Yeah, by the sea.
Well, look, you're making Fergus and I very jealous. But at least we got to see Fergus's stick, which is bigger than I expected. Fergus, come and see us again soon. Norma as well. Have a lovely holiday, and we'll get the views of Kristina Rihanov shortly. Because next up, I'll be asking, should employers be able to monitor their employees' social media activities? Is it all right if someone that's going to hire you wants to see your Twitter and wants to know about your dating profile? Surely that's private. We'll discuss that next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. We're with you right through until 11. The papers at 10:20, live and uninterrupted. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. All your favourite elements as well. My Take at 10 monologue, my panel, and in my Big Opinion monologue, I'll be telling you about the awful story, that woman who was mauled to death by 8 dogs. She was out walking 8 dogs. And I think if you're going to buy a dog, you've got to walk it yourself. So we'll discuss that after 9 o'clock. But we, of course, start Mark Dolan Tonight every Saturday with a People's Hour, in which I take your video calls on the big stories of the day. Now, teachers are being asked to hand over dating profiles and information about their social media activity when applying for a job. Whilst there are clear safeguarding issues in relation to children and their teachers, is it really anyone's business what a worker gets up to in their private time, as long as they're not breaking the law? With all sorts of businesses and industries trawling through people's social media history, is this an assault on privacy and an assault on our right to freedom of speech? After all, why should a spicy tweet about COVID measures or Brexit, for example, cause you to lose your job with an accountancy firm? So, should what you do online affect your job? Let's speak to Adik in Medway. Hi, Adik.
Hi, Mark. Happy New Year. I didn't have a chance to let you know that.
It's so good to have you back. You look splendid, as always, the best-dressed man in the People's Hour. I'm really worried about this, Adik. As far as I'm concerned, if you're not breaking the law, you can do whatever you like in your private life.
I completely agree with you. That's why before you have sensitive jobs, schools, NHS, you have DBS checks. That's the purpose of checking if you have a police record, if you have criminal record. Beside that, the employee has nothing to do with your personal life. Everything is done in your private time. That's your life. And think about now how our life is. Now it's even dangerous to say hello to a woman on the street. You can actually now it's basically dangerous to look in the eyes. With all what's going on with the woke agenda, people are afraid even to make contact. How people going to meet each other? I mean, it's basically going now to the underwear of every individual that is your employee. It's completely unacceptable.
I completely agree. Christina, I'd love you to join this conversation. As far as I'm concerned, Big Brother is watching you. This is an attack on your human rights and an attack on freedom of speech. What do you think?
Well, I think social media accounts, called social because they are social, anybody can Google, anybody can have a look at your Instagram and Twitter and Facebook account and so on, and everything you put out there is in social domain. So there isn't any law which sort of prevents the employer looking into it in fair play. I think what happens in your private life, should stay private, that's why it's called private, and that's absolutely correct. I worked at the school, my daughter's school, for a while. I was just covering maternity leave and doing some classes, fitness classes, dance classes. I had an enhanced DBS check, and I think, that's a fair play. Obviously, that has to be done very thoroughly when you work with children, but I don't think giving your private accounts on dating apps should be allowed.
No. I mean, I'll be honest with you, full disclosure, when I joined GB News, they didn't do any checks. They'll take anyone. But the issue we've got, Adik, is, I suppose in relation to teachers, it's safeguarding, isn't it? So, for example, do you want a primary school teacher to be a star on the subscription website OnlyFans in which they're posing naked?
Let's go back what happened in Canada with these transgender women with the big breasts.
The woodwork teacher.
Sorry?
The woodwork teacher.
Exactly. That's
gave me wood.
How come there is no problem there? But now, when we come into a more private and more normal human being, sorry about to say that, it's become a problem. When I think all these accounts, OnlyFans and so on, it's not just you access it straight away. I think there are some stages to go on that account. And I don't see any problem here, specifically right now, when the income of people becomes shorter, people need some supplementary, some supplement. Why not? I don't see any harm. And specifically, people maybe can actually create or educate about balance, which a lot of people living their life right now online, completely unbalanced. And maybe it's some example what is a balance between real life and what is a balance about having on the internet. And someone with common sense and someone on the ground maybe can give that balance to people who have no balance anymore. I think young people, 90% of young people have a Facebook, Instagram account. They're living their life online. People need some education how to live real life as well. I personally don't see any problem with it. Again, DBS check if it's criminality has happened. Nothing has happened. And I think that these kind of people, there was the newspaper about the teacher in Cornwall, and good for him. I did look at the picture. Well done. Good for him. I wish I was able to do it myself.
Well, Adik, if I was hiring you, I would assume you've got an OnlyFans account. Otherwise, it would be a terrible waste. Christina, final thoughts with you. I think there should be an amnesty on what people have done online in the past, because if an 18-year-old sends a stupid tweet, it shouldn't affect their career 10 years later.
Well, I think it's all down to if you're suitable for the job anyway, if you have the knowledge, if you have the background and you're the best person for the job. Of course, there is anyone who can look into your online accounts and what you're saying and what you do. But at the end of the day, private should stay private and social accounts are there for anyone to check.
My sincere thanks to the brilliant dancer and entrepreneur, Christina Rihanov. She's got to jump in the car because she's working tomorrow, the busiest woman in showbiz. Thank you, Christina. Do come back and see us soon. That was a really great contribution. Also, my thanks to the brilliant Lars in Windsor, Sue in Cheshire, Fergus in Greenwich, and Adik in Medway. You're all stars. Love you loads. Do come back and see us soon. Thanks to Norma in Gran Canaria as well. And apologies to Sean in Cambridgeshire. We had trouble with the line, but we'll get you on the show very soon. Lots more to come. It is Mark Dolan tonight. And in my big opinion, after a professional dog walker tragically dies whilst out with 8 dogs, I'm going to say that you shouldn't buy a dog if you can't walk it yourself. I'm not pulling my punches. I've got strong views on that horrific story, and that's on the other side of the news headlines, plus my all-star panel and tomorrow's papers and my take at 10 and Kinsey Schofield. Don't go anywhere.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
This is Mark Dolan Tonight. Coming up in my big opinion monologue, after a professional dog walker tragically dies whilst out with 8 dogs. She was attacked by those dogs. My view is that you shouldn't buy a dog if you can't walk it yourself. In the big question, with dating apps and quick hookups on the rise, is romance dead? Plus, the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield, as always on a Saturday, reflecting on the sad death of Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis Presley's daughter. In the news agenda with my panel, I'll be asking, is it morally wrong not to tip, especially during a cost of living crisis? Is it now an obligation? And in my take at 10, as rock superstar Noel Gallagher splits up from his wife of 22 years, this is the perfect moment for an Oasis reunion. Plus, we've got tomorrow's papers live and uninterrupted 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20, right through until 11. So much to get through and the perfect person with whom to do it. She's got the headlines and much more besides. Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you. I am Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB newsroom. A 7-year-old girl is in life-threatening condition in hospital after a suspected drive-by shooting in North London. A total of 6 people have been injured in the attack, which happened outside a funeral in Camden. 4 women aged between 21 and 54 are being treated in hospital. A 48-year-old has suffered potentially life-changing injuries. A second child, aged 12, was taken to hospital but has since been released. Police are appealing for any witnesses and say no arrests have yet been made. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British-Iranian national accused of spying. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak described the killing of Ali Reza Akbari as callous and cowardly. Iran's state media is reporting the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, which is accusing Britain of meddling in their national security. But Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the government will temporarily withdraw its ambassador and that they're considering further action.
When I found out earlier this morning from the officials in Tehran that this had taken place, of course, I was filled with a revulsion that I think any reasonable person would have. That is why we have taken this decisive action. That is why we've made it clear that our response will not necessarily be limited to the measures that we have announced today. We take this incredibly seriously.
At least 5 people have been killed after a Russian missile strike hit an apartment building in central Ukraine. Dnipro's regional governor says at least 27 people, including 6 children, were injured in the attack, with more people still trapped under the rubble. Moscow's missiles also hit vital energy facilities across Ukraine today. Rishi Sunak has pledged to supply British battle tanks to Ukraine to help the country retake territory lost to Russia. 5 more pages of classified material have been found in US President Joe Biden's family home in Delaware. Earlier this week, his legal team admitted documents relating to his time as vice president during the Obama administration had been found at his house and private office in Washington. The US Attorney General has appointed a special counsel to investigate the matter. And nursing strikes have been paused in Scotland after talks between the First Minister and the Royal College of Nursing. Negotiations will continue next week with the aim of reaching a deal by the end of February. The Scottish Government is also pledging to match any NHS pay increase in England if it's higher. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
My thanks to Bethany Elsey, who returns in an hour's time. Thanks, Bethany. This is Mark Dolan tonight. In my big opinion monologue, after a professional dog walker tragically dies whilst out with 8 dogs they attacked her, this story reflects our consumerist society. Don't buy a dog if you can't afford to walk it yourself. In the big question, with dating apps and quick hookups on the rise, is romance dead? We'll hear from both sides on that one. We've got the papers at the earlier time of 10:20 right through until 11. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. We'll be joined by top Fleet Street columnist Ross Clark to discuss what's making Sunday's front pages. Before that, we'll be stateside with the brilliant Kinsey Schofield, the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting. Among other things, we'll be discussing the sad death of singer Lisa Marie Presley, of course, the daughter of Elvis. In my take at 10, as rock superstar Noel Gallagher splits up from his wife of 22 years. Very sad story, of course, but this is the perfect moment for an Oasis reunion. Come on, boys, your country needs you. With me throughout the show, reacting to the big stories of the day, my all-star panel, legendary radio and television presenter Diddy David Hamilton, Olympic gymnast and superb broadcaster Lisa Mason, and journalist and political commentator, a very old friend of mine, Peter Lloyd. Now I want to hear from you throughout the show, mark@gbnews.uk. The best bit of my programme is when you get in touch. Now, this programme has a golden rule. What is that rule? We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. So for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. And it's Saturday. So let's have some fun along the way. And let's start with this. I was shocked to hear the story of a 28-year-old dog walker out with 8 animals being mauled to death in a Surrey park. Now, this woman reportedly knew the dogs and was doubtless on good terms with them. But after she intervened when one of the dogs attacked another passing dog, these creatures developed a pack mentality and went for her in what was a truly horrific and frenzied attack. According to witnesses, she was tangled up in dog leads and couldn't even use her arms or stand up properly to keep the dogs away. As this hellish scene played out, she urged passers-by to stay away as well, as she perished at the hands of these hounds. None of these dogs were categorised as being dangerous breeds, and it's a timely reminder that any dog can be a threat. Any dog can turn on you, any dog can be vicious. It doesn't help that at least 2 of the dogs were in the large dog category. Can you imagine what this poor woman went through? The terror, the pain, the horror. There are no words, and my heart goes out to her loved ones as they try to process this inexplicable and freak occurrence. But it raises an important question about dog ownership. With many people having bought puppies during the pandemic, a good number have either found the animals too much to deal with once they got bigger, or following the lifting of COVID measures, found that whilst they were at home non-stop for 2 years, are now needed back in the office and need someone else to take care of their pets. I have to say, I find the growing number of professional dog walkers to be the worst example of our consumerist society. Too many people, in my view, want to buy a pet and enjoy the perks without having to do any of the work. But why buy a dog if you can't take it for a walk? It's lazy and it can't be great for the mental health of the animal, who would surely like to be with its owner. And it can't be great for the animal's physical health either. Dogs are not designed to be walked on leads in a group of 8. They want to be on their own, dashing around a field and bringing a stick or a ball back to their owner. And the explosion in dog walking services is bad news for other members of the public and other dogs, as these vast packs of animals in a mega group foul. They bark and at times can be quite hard to actually get past, which is scary for pensioners and children. Following the tragic death of this poor woman, I believe that stricter rules should come into place in relation to these dog walking services, with a licence required and a maximum of, say, 4 animals per dog walker, and perhaps controlled zones, as is the case in a number of public parks, including London's Hampstead Heath. But above and beyond that, it's time for a wider conversation about how we treat our animals. We call ourselves in Britain a nation of animal lovers, but there's not much proof of that when we're so willing to buy these creatures but not be around for them. We seem to have forgotten that pets are not a disposable item. It's not like buying a flat-screen TV or a smartphone. The Guardian newspaper points out that 20 years ago, there were only around 6 million dogs in the UK, compared with 13 million today. Now, much as I love dogs, I'm not sure that's a good thing. These creatures have huge demands. They need to get out 2 or 3 times a day. They need exercise, they need great nutrition, and they need company. What they don't need is the cramped company of 7 or 8 other animals vying for the attention of an overstretched dog-walking professional. If you can't take your dog for a walk, don't get a dog in the first place. If you don't have time for walkies, walk away. What's your view? Of course, lots of people have dogs and they need the services of a dog walker. Perhaps they've got a hybrid work situation. So maybe it's part-time in the office when they need the dog walker and part-time at home. What is your solution? Have you got a pet? Do you use a dog walker? Are you a dog walker? Let me know your thoughts, especially if you don't agree, because this programme is all about opinions. Mark at gbnews.co.uk. I'll come to your opinions shortly, but first, let's get the views of my brilliant panel. We have broadcasting legend David Hamilton, Olympic gymnast Lisa Mason and broadcaster and political commentator Peter Lloyd. Peter, great to have you back on the show. It's been far too long.
Yep.
Obviously a very tragic story. What do you think when you see large packs of dogs out for a walk with one person?
Well, I'm a cat man myself, so I kind of bristle when I see large dogs because I completely appreciate that they are descendants of wolves and they are very primal beings. The average dog has a jaw that can inflict hundreds of pounds of pressure and weight onto the average person. That is enough to break bones. The average domesticated pet can't do that. Dogs are a special type of animal, and I think for that reason they also carry a certain type of enhanced risk. For that reason, I think really what we need to start doing is, instead of blaming the dogs, we need to start making dog owners more responsible, and that means in cases like this, prosecuting them under British law. These dog owners could go to prison for 14 years. Why don't we start doing more of that? It would make them take note.
And Lisa Mason, what bothers me is people who buy dogs thinking someone else will take them for a walk. What's the point in that?
I mean, I think a lot of people do that with their kids, don't they? So one of the main reasons I've never had a dog, I always say having a dog is like having a child that never grows up. For me personally, I'm the same as you. I'm very much a cat person. I'm not really a dog person. I understand so many of my friends have dogs. I've never really been comfortable in the sense that I do get scared when dogs jump up at me. I've been walking my child in a stroller and I've had a dog jump up onto my child's pram and, tried to nip her face when she was a baby. I'm very, very fearful of them. And I feel like a lot of, dog owners will say, oh, but my dog's not like that, don't need any help, they're just playing. No. I work with children. There's a limit to how many children that I can work with individually, and I think there should be a rule in place where you can. I agree with you, Mark, that there should only be a maximum of 4. Even with 4, I think that's a lot. Based on sizes, etc., it's a lot, and I do think that there needs to be more rules in place and I don't mean to try and compare the two, but, with children, there's a lot of rules. With dogs, I believe there should be a lot of rules because the mindset is quite similar in the sense that, they need discipline, they need love, they need attention. And, people just kind of think, oh, well, I can just do that and get away with it. And I don't think that should be the case.
David Hamilton, do you think that we should be more careful when we buy a dog to be sure that we'll have time to look after it?
Yes, I'm actually the dog lover here on the panel. I do have a dog. I have, as I think I told you before, a feisty Cocker Spaniel. And sometimes...
I have heard about your feisty cock.
I knew you were going to make a crack about that. Sometimes she does go for other dogs, so I keep her on the lead and I say to people, I warn them, and I say she can be a bit snarky. And sometimes they don't take the hint, and I feel like saying, well, what more can I do? But no, I do agree with you. I think that a lot of problems have been caused by lockdown, where people were very lonely and they got pets, and then as time went by, they found that they started working again and they didn't have time to look after their dogs. And so this is what happens. They get dog walkers. And in this particular case, which is an absolutely tragic story, unfortunately, the lady concerned was probably walking too many dogs. And it's not always the breeds that we think of that are dangerous. Apparently, a lot of these were quite small dogs. I think there was one big dog and the others were quite small. But as I know with my little Cocker Spaniel, little dogs can be very, very aggressive. So, yes, I think there should be a limit, and people who are walking them must be registered properly so that, that we know who the dog walkers are. So it is a really, really tragic story. But dogs can bring so much into your life, but at the same time, you have to give a lot back to them. And when you take that on, that's the deal.
What's your view? Are you a dog walker? Do you use a dog walking service? Or are you a dog owner? Do let me know. It's Mark at gbnews.uk. Still to come, we react to the very sad news of the sudden death of Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of Elvis. We'll speak to the Queen of US showbiz reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Also, we've got my take at 10, and very sad news, the breakup, the divorce of Noel Gallagher and his wife, Sarah McDonald. But it provides an opportunity for Oasis to reunite. That's my take at 10. You won't want to miss that. That's the good news the country needs in this cost of living crisis. So we've got all that to come. But next up in The Big Question, is romance dead in the age of dating apps? See you shortly.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind. And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Well, a very big reaction to my big opinion monologue. A professional dog walker has been, she's been attacked, she's been mauled to death by 8 dogs in a Surrey park. I think we need tougher rules. 8 is ridiculous, but your reaction on email, mark@gbnews.uk. And let's have a look. Linda says, Mark, make it law that all dogs are muzzled when out on walks. How about this from, I think it's Lisa. Hi, Mark, I'm a dog walker and I'd never walk more than 4 dogs together. And then it's only dogs I've walked for a long time and know well. I mainly walk 2 to 3 dogs or solo dogs. Apart from anything else, it's hard to keep up with them pooing and picking up. Dog walkers who walk big packs are a danger and greedy for money. I don't know this lady's circumstances and would never criticise, but my absolute condolences to the family. Well, thank you for that very beautifully written and email there, suffused with sentiment. How about Lynn? Hi, Mark. This is a tragedy. 8 dogs being walked at one time should never be allowed. Not only is it tragic for this lady, but also for the owners who now must await the fate of their beloved dogs. Dogs are pack animals and we should not be so arrogant that we can control what's in their nature. Alan says, completely agree with your views on dog ownership. We have a Great Dane called Tucker who comes to work with us every day. Whilst he doesn't need masses of exercise, he goes out 3 or 4 times a day and clearly loves being with us and our customers and meeting their dogs. Would never consider either leaving him at home or handing him over to the care of anyone else. And Alan has sent me a picture of Tucker, and he's absolutely gorgeous. I assume it's Tucker and not Alan. I'll get that verified later. It's time now for this. Yes, it's time for the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. And Saturday night used to be date night as people of all ages took their other halves out for an evening, maybe some dinner, a movie, a spot of dancing. What happened to those days? We now live in a world of online dating, swiping left or right on your phone, and quick hookups. The art of seduction seems to be on the way out. Or is that a misapprehension? That's tonight's big question. Is romance dead? I'm delighted to be joined by Kezia Noble, a dating and relationship expert, and the comedian and relationship veteran, Lewis Schaefer. Lewis, I'll come to you. I'll come to you very shortly, Lewis, but let me ask you, Kezia, because you are the professional. Is romance dead?
If you asked me this a year ago, I would have said yes, but I'm seeing a revival in romance. So I have a lot of students that come to me, a lot of guys who have just given up with dating apps. We reached peak saturation in 2020 and 2021, and they're now looking for a way to meet women that is not at the mercy of an algorithm, and it's more organic. And women, my female friends, are also ditching their dating apps. Everyone is just experiencing like some kind of like hangover from dating apps. So I think there is definitely a revival.
I'm glad to hear that. Lewis Schaefer, you're an old romantic, aren't you?
No, I was an old romantic. I'm not a romantic anymore. I don't think changing dating apps will have anything to do with it. Is that it's too dangerous to date women today. I mean, it's just too dangerous. It's the accusations, the animosity, the acrimony, the divorce. I mean, even with a beautiful woman here, I mean, it's not worth getting involved.
Lewis, I think you're telling us your life story there. You've revealed a lot in that short answer. What do you understand romance to be, Lewis? How would you define romance?
Well, I think romance from a woman's point of view isn't the same as from a man's point of view. I think from a woman's point of view, it's like candy and prizes. It's like a man going up to her and just sort of wooing her and making her love him. I don't think that can exist nowadays. I think women are no longer interested in men doing that. They have their own things, unless a man has a lot of things.
I see. So you don't think, Lewis, that women need men anymore?
I don't think that they do. I think you hit the nail on the head, basically. And our society benefits from having divorce. It benefits from having split families. It benefits economically. It doesn't help the children, and it doesn't help the people who are involved. But the economy is much richer. And so women work, and they have enough money. Maybe they don't have as much money as men do if they get a divorce, but they have enough money to live.
Kezia, do you agree with what Lewis has to say there? It all sounds very depressing.
I agree with some of what he said, but going back to the original question, is romance dead? You have to look at it as a lot of people, as I said, they're done with this kind of like easy hookups. I mean, hookups are fun. But there's so many men and women that want actually that whole kind of like, courting, dining, roses, taking her for dinner. Both men and women miss that because, as we all know, the catch, is so much better if we've had to work for it a little bit. So I think it's something for both men and women. I am seeing my students that are coming to me have said, they want to go back to that. And they approach women in the street, they approach women in bars, and they never get, this kind of like really bad reaction. I think a lot of it is like just fake news. It's in the media saying that women react this way to men. If you approach a woman with confidence and certainty and you're polite, then she's gonna, the worst that she's gonna say is, I'm not interested, and that's it.
And Kazia, these dating apps, some of my viewers might not know, but you can go on your phone, you flick through a load of faces, there's one you like, you say yes, and an hour later you're in bed together. You mentioned that some of your clients have gone off that. Do those apps ever lead to lasting love?
Yes, they do, but it's getting less and less because a lot of people, I mean, we're going to be honest here, don't look like their photographs. They don't, they might be able to be very good at texting and messaging, and they have this really well-constructed bio, but in reality, they don't know how to talk to a woman, or the woman doesn't know how to talk, to a man. So I think both parties are let down when they see the woman or the man that they're going to date, that they're on the date with, because men are always shorter in real life and women are always bigger in real life. That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm hearing. So even if the woman, let's say the guy meets a woman and she's good looking, she's a good looking girl, she'll never be as good looking as her picture, unfortunately, because of filters and so on. So it's always going to be that kind of like, little bit of a letdown. And I think people are just done with that now. This is what I'm seeing, and this is what I'm hearing from my female friends who are using dating apps. They are done.
Isn't it good, knowing male human nature, Kazia, isn't it good to make men wait a little bit? There was that famous book a few years ago called The Game, and I think it explained to women in great detail how you've got to keep the guy hungry.
Of course, I love that book. It's a great book. And yes, men love the thrill of the chase. They love it. And I think women are realizing that now. Like, if they give it up too easily, no judgment here, but if they are giving it up too easily, then the guy's kind of like, oh, okay, I'm done. I've had my fun and I'm going to move on. And, all this girl power and stuff like that, I think that it's kind of like now it's reached a point where a lot of women are just like unhappy, and they want to get into a relationship with somebody, and just like casual hookups. There are some rare occasions when it does work out and a relationship happens as a result, but usually it's not. Like, men will just they'll have their way and thank you, goodbye, who's next on the dating app.
Kazia, I don't want to be sexist. I try to consider myself a feminist, but I just wonder whether these dating apps for the quick hookups are better for men than women. Is that an unfair generalization?
Look, they are on the whole probably better for men because, male nature, they'd rather have no strings attached kind of hookups. However, I am seeing a lot of men saying, no, I'm not happy with this anymore. It's like, they're getting to a point where it's kind of like, it's meaningless. They want a relationship with a woman and they just know they're not going to get it from these dating apps as much. And the best way to meet a woman is organically, is to go up to her, approach her in a coffee shop, in a bookshop. Women want that story. They want to go back to their girlfriends and say, I met this guy in a coffee shop. He just approached me. People are so bored of those stories of, I met him through an algorithm, or I met him when I was just scrolling through a dating app.
Well, the worst story I heard about Tinder, which is one of those apps where you can meet people in your area, and it was a woman who, she went to bed with this guy, and after they'd finished, she got out of the bed. He was immediately back on his phone looking for the next date, right? Moments after coitus. Listen, a bit of Latin, you're welcome. That education wasn't wasted. Lewis Schaefer, if it's not too personal a question, are you single?
I don't think...
Maybe.
It depends who's making me the offer. If Kazia is making me an offer, I think I might be available. Well, I think she's lovely, but I think she's totally wrong about this. And I think you can't ask a woman opinion about this. These dating apps are horrific for everyone. They're really bad for men because most men don't get a look in because women hate the way men look. They just hate the way men look unless the guy is unbelievably good looking. And then they'll go for the guy. But most guys do not get a chance. And the ones who do get a chance, the reason why, like the story that you said on Tinder, where the guy's going out with looking for somebody else right after coitus, right, is because he's a Chad, as we call it in the industry, right? Because he's a Chad. He's like, he's a top 10% guy. People like Lewis Schaefer don't. Maybe I've got a chance now in the older man category. The fact is, is that relationships are kaput nowadays. There's no hope for relationships. It's the death of love. Is that divorce is so prevalent. Men are losing their houses like crazy. The accusations are unbelievable. And so they just figure there's no hope in getting into a relationship. I might as well stay away.
Well, Lewis, I'm going to disagree with you because I think you are London's most eligible bachelor, if not Britain's, okay? You've got an incredible sense of humour. You're a world-class comedian. You're, of course, the star of the hit late-night newspaper review show Headliners. You're the king of the comedy circuit. You came from Caroline's Comedy Club in New York. Here you are in England. You've got money. You got looks.
It's all downhill.
So listen, let's get you out there to all the women watching. Just take a few things. What is your height?
I mean, should a man even give away that kind of information? Isn't that like too personal? You don't ask a woman her weight. I'm 5'10".
You're a bit of a shorty, aren't you? You're a bit of a shorty.
No, that's
Tom
that's
Cruise?
1 inch. No, you ask Kazia. No. That's 1 inch above normal.
All right. Well, look, you're less than 6 foot, but you're stocky. What are your hobbies?
No, I am not stocky. I'm not stocky. I weigh 81.3 kilograms. This is horrible.
What is your weight? What is your mass?
I'm not stocky.
What is your weight?
What are you saying?
My
weight is 81.3 kilograms.
81.3 kilograms. That's about 11.5 stone. Okay. And what star sign? What star sign are you?
Well, I'm flexible on that. It depends on what the girl is looking for.
Do you have a party trick? Can you do anything with your body or your mind?
I think my party trick is, at my age, I'm still alive and kicking, and I think that's a good thing. I don't want to say that I've got a girlfriend because it will hurt my odds with other women.
I challenge the narrative that love is dead. I challenge the narrative that you can't be blissfully happy with the next Mrs. Schaefer. Last question: any hobbies?
Any hobbies? Basically worrying. I'm a New York Jew. I mean, if you like that kind, you'd like me. I'm very New Yorky.
I notice you're at home. It says Lewis Schaefer behind you. How many parts of the house have got your name on the wall?
I need to be reminded. I'm not. I know you think that I'm at home. I'm in Kuala Lumpur right now. I just flew in from Hobart, Tasmania, on my way to Nairobi. Okay, so I'm at home.
Kezia, you get the last word. I think that Lewis is underselling himself. I don't think love is dead, is it?
It's not, no. But again, if you'd asked me this last year, I would have given you a different answer. But from my students, I am seeing a big shift now. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but there is definitely a revival.
Brilliant. Well, you can find Lewis on Twitter. He's at BigBoy71. There you go. And there's some quite strong images on there. Thanks to relationships and dating expert Kezia Noble and top comedian and star of Headliners, Lewis Schaefer. Kezia, we can't wait to see you in the studio for the panel very soon. Lots more to come after the break. The sad death of Lisa Marie Presley. Her father was, of course, Elvis. We'll get reaction from the Queen of US Showbiz and Raw reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, why are William, Kate and King Charles now so popular? I think we can probably guess why, but she'll have the answer. And still to come in our news agenda with my panel. Is it morally wrong not to tip, especially during the cost of living crisis? Plus, we've got my Take at 10 monologue. Lots to get through. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time now for US News with the Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
What a feisty conversation, Mark. I was sitting over here laughing, blushing. I hope romance is not dead. I mean, look at you. You're such a stallion. You're the perfect example that romance is still alive. You and Mrs. Dolan, what a love story.
You'll have to ask Mrs. Dolan whether she can bear out those kind comments. Would you like to have the US comedian Louis Schaefer back in America?
Yeah, absolutely. Bring him back. Send him back. He's a hoot. And I'm sure he can find love, you know, definitely in the Florida region. They look at a guy like him and they see money.
Of course they do. They know he hasn't got long. Listen, lots of stories to get through. In a moment, we're going to talk about the extraordinary popularity of the Prince and Princess of Wales and King Charles. I can't imagine why they're so popular at the moment. And also rather an interesting story from the White House in relation to Americans using a gas stove. But we'll start with a really, really sad story, Kinsey. The death of Lisa Marie Presley, singer, entrepreneur, and of course, the daughter of Elvis.
Absolutely. A rock star in her own right. I've got my TCB shirt on, that taking care of business. That was, you know, Elvis's motto. This is devastating. This was our American, royal family, Mark. Lisa Marie, a royal, you know, she did not want to follow in her father's footsteps. She didn't want to do the type of music he did. She was very punk rock in everything she did. She always talked about how she disliked something first. She never went with the crowd. But she, I think that we're really going to miss her here in the States. It wasn't the first cardiac arrest that took her life. It was the second cardiac arrest. Her family had signed a do not resuscitate form. She was brain dead at the time of her death, and her family just said, let's not continue to put her body through this. Riley, her 33-year-old daughter, I've met her before. She's an actress. She's incredible. I know that she is going to make her mother proud in mentoring and taking care of her two sisters that are 14 years old, her stepsisters. A huge loss to the States. But at the end of the day, Mark, it really does bring me some peace to know that she's reunited with not only her father, but her son, Benjamin, who took his own life 2 years ago. And people say she's not been the same since.
No, and she was so much like her father. You know, she was our great connection to a man who was effectively the greatest singer in the history of music.
Do you remember not too long ago, you had this incredible guest on your show, and I'm so sorry for forgetting her name, but she's an Elvis author, and she discusses in one of her books that they have heart problems, this family, because of cousins marrying in the past. She was the first person to say this, and that's actually one of the big stories that came out of this death. Could these heart problems, could this heart disease be a result of, their ancestry and genetics? And I think that that is seriously something that we could discuss. I think that that's a legitimate question to ask, because Elvis lost his life so young, and his mother lost her life so young. And I think that 54 years old is too young for us to lose Lisa Marie, Mark.
Well, no, and can we talk about just how much of an American icon Elvis was and continues to be? Of course, we had the biopic of his life that came out recently, which to all intents and purposes was a box office smash.
Absolutely. And Lisa Marie was so absolutely excited about this film. She toured to promote the movie all over the world. And they could have easily said, we don't want anything to do with this. We don't, they clearly, truly felt enthusiastic over Austin Butler's performance and over the way that this movie was made. It's an award-winning film. It's going to continue to win awards. But what's so sweet is that, we saw her a few days ago at the Golden Globes crying over Austin Butler accepting his award for the Elvis film. They do say that since she lost Benjamin, this film gave her something to live for and something to be proud of.
Well, may she rest in peace. She was a wonderful artist in her own right, a very beautiful woman and a loving mother, taken from us far too soon. That book you mentioned, Kinsey, was Destined to Die Young by Sally A. Hodel, which I've got to say I read by way of preparation for the interview, and it was a cracking read. Destined to Die Young, as you say, relating to Elvis's health issues. So Will and Kate make their first public appearance since the release of that memoir. Let's not try to talk about that couple in California. Let's talk about Will and Kate, more popular than ever.
That's right. They were at the official opening of the Royal Liverpool University Hospital. Look at the crowd that showed up for these two. Everybody that actually interacted with them said they were so sweet. Prince William taking selfies with some of the staff. Of course, we see Catherine taking photos with all of the dogs that are, if there's a baby or a dog, you can put your money on the fact that the Princess of Wales is going to, like a magnet, she's immediately drawn to all things sweet, puppies and babies. But yeah, I think that this is, I know that they're probably devastated at home, personally upset, but this silence, it is just so dignified and elevates them. They're above the fray. And I think that most people are looking at them, admiring the way that they're handling the situation.
Definitely. Now let's have a word about the Biden administration. The US President Joe Biden, with some policy to stop Americans using their gas stove. Tell me more.
Right. They're saying that there is a chemical that comes from gas stove use that it makes children more likely to have asthma. Ron DeSantis has stepped in and said, there's no way you're taking our gas stoves away from us. There's an argument that is this just another way for the government to control us at home? So this is not a very popular direction that Biden's taking. But Mark, if I were to ask you if you could point one popular direction Biden's taken recently, I think it might take you a second to figure that out.
Look, it's always great to check in with you, Kinsey. And I received an invitation to appear on your podcast, which I'm delighted to accept on the national television airwaves. By the way, what is your podcast called?
It's called To Die For Daily.
There you go, which is, of course, the name of your hit website as well. I look forward to being starstruck in your company very shortly. The Queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Thanks, Kinsey. We'll see you in 7 days. Coming up in the news agenda with my panel, as an Uber driver, a taxi driver breaks down after getting tipped just 84p. I'll be asking, is it morally wrong not to tip, especially during a cost of living crisis? Plus, we've got my take at 10 and the papers, live and uninterrupted from 10:20. So much to get through. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Us.
I'll get to your emails shortly. In my Take at 10, I'll be reacting to the sad news that Noel Gallagher has split up with his wife of 22 years. My reaction, I think there's a silver lining to that cloud. So do join us at 10 for that. Plus, we've got the papers at 10:20, 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. And, of course, it's the Sunday papers with some very big political stories bubbling away. Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Now, the cost of living crisis is making everyone save their pennies, and one member of the public has reached tipping point. An Uber driver posted an emotional video on TikTok after getting an 84p tip, asking how he was supposed to survive on such small amounts. So, should he have told the customer to tip off? Let's talk about this. Peter, nice writing there from my team.
Very good. I approve.
But you do wonder, don't you, whether there is a moral obligation to tip, particularly in the current cost of living crisis?
Yeah. Well, I've always maintained that one of the best things about being British is that tipping culture doesn't really exist over here. In America, it is so aggressive and it really dents the bank balance. I was just recently come back from Seattle and there was a restaurant there that put a mandatory 35% service charge.
Crazy.
And the annoying thing was, the service wasn't that great.
No, and when you buy a beer in America, you have to put a dollar or two down.
Right.
Every round, you put a couple of quid down.
I think the answer to that is companies or small businesses, restaurants, bars, whatever, they need to pay their staff a proper wage rather than passing on that wage responsibility to the customer. It's not the customer's job to pay the staff's wages. It's the business owners.
And Peter, there's nothing worse than the obligatory tip
Right.
The service charge that you have no control over, whether it's good or bad.
Well, that renders the whole point of tipping pointless. The whole purpose of tipping is that it's a thank you for exemplary service or above standard service. You shouldn't be tipping anybody. You shouldn't reward anybody for bad behaviour, and that includes bad service.
Well, David, do you think this taxi driver was overreacting at receiving an 84 pence tip?
Well, obviously he was very, very unhappy about it, but this will surprise you, Mark, but a lot of comedians are very tight. And I've got a story for you about Tommy Cooper, who I work with. Wonderfully funny man, as you know, but he was notoriously careful, shall we say. And whenever he took a taxi, he would always say to the driver, have a drink on me, and he'd give him a tea bag.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So you can imagine, can't you? You know,
brilliant.
The driver gets home and says to us, you never guessed, love, who I had in the cab today. Tommy Cooper, did he give you a tip? Yes, he did. And there's the tea bag. So, but taking up what Peter was saying, yes, I really resent when you go to a restaurant here and you get an obligatory service charge, sometimes 12.5%. Yeah. It's too much. You don't want to give 12.5%, and you don't want to be told what your tip is. So I do tip in restaurants, but I don't like it when they say, they put that, you know, as an automatic 12.5%, too much. I think 10% is enough.
It's also inconsistent because we tip waiters and waitresses, which is fair enough, but we don't tip bar staff in this country.
No.
We don't tip cleaners in hotels. So it's not a level playing field, is it?
It's very difficult to know who to tip. I don't think we tip taxi drivers as much as we did. I remember in the past giving drivers, you know, a tip more. Nowadays, sometimes, you know, I have a cab or something and I don't actually tip them. I become a bit like Tommy Cooper.
Partly because maybe the bill was quite high already.
Yeah, probably, and probably because I'm a tight old git.
OK, not even a tea bag from Diddy David Hamilton. What do you think about this, Lisa? Because in some ways it's a reflection of personality as to who tips and who doesn't.
Well, I think, I mean, the driver that made the video was American. There's a very big difference in pay in America for being a waiter or a waitress or a delivery driver.
Yeah.
We have your, you know, minimum wage set in place over here. So, you know, if you look at the English term of what a tip is, it's a discretionary tip, isn't it? So it's like, if you're doing a good job, then we're going to tip you. And I agree with both of these gentlemen that had said, you know, I think if you want to...
I like that.
That's a big
You
word.
gentlemen.
Suffer a gentleman,
I think you might get a tip from David later.
She obviously doesn't know us.
But no, I think it should be down to you. I was actually in America and was chased down the street one time because I'd only left a certain amount of a tip, and there was like, was there something wrong with my service? I was like, well, no. I mean, it was just, you did your job. I'm not here to pay you to do your job. But in America, you know, I think it really does fall on the customers to basically pay these waitress staff or the delivery drivers because their actual wage is very, very poor. So it should be down to the companies to increase that.
Do you know what, though? You should tip the waiter and not the establishment. I think the person who is actually, you know, serving you is the person who should get the tip.
But a lot of the places, they make them split tips now, so you can't even give it straight to your
I tell you
server.
who else should be tipped, and that is the talking heads on news panel shows.
Definitely. Definitely. Shall we have a whip round?
Yeah, they should be tipped.
I think so. I think we'll cap it at 5% though, because GB News is a start-up and we're on a budget. Listen, lots more to come from my woefully underpaid panel. We've got lots to get through. The papers at 10:20. That's 10 minutes earlier than everyone else. And next up in my take at 10, my reaction to the news that Noel Gallagher is getting divorced. I think that cloud has a silver lining. Find out why shortly. Plus your emails, mark at gbnews.uk. Lots to get through. Don't go anywhere.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stumped. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, as rock superstar Noel Gallagher splits up from his wife of 22 years, this is the perfect moment for an Oasis reunion. Come on, boys, your country needs you. In the news agenda with my panel, is it right to stay friends with an ex's family after you've broken up? Plus, tomorrow's papers live and uninterrupted 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20, right through until 11. And reacting to the big stories, not just my panel, but at 10:20, I'm delighted to have Telegraph and Mail columnist Ross Clark. Lots to get through, including that take at 10. You won't want to miss it. But first, the headlines with Bethany Elsey.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. And some news in the last half an hour. The Royal College of Nursing says it will announce a new round of strikes in February if negotiations don't progress by the end of this month. Nurses from more than 70 NHS trusts in England are already planning to walk out on the 18th and 19th of January in a dispute over pay and patient safety. The union says double the number of nurses will be asked to take part in the industrial action next month if it goes ahead. This comes as the government are trying to pass new legislation requiring minimum service levels on strike days. A 7-year-old girl is in life-threatening condition in hospital after a suspected drive-by shooting in North London. A total of 6 people have been injured in the attack, which happened outside a funeral in Camden. 4 women aged between 21 and 54 are being treated in hospital. A 48-year-old woman has suffered potentially life-changing injuries. A second child, aged 12, was taken to hospital but has since been released. Police are appealing for any witnesses and say no arrests have yet been made. The UK has sanctioned Iran's Prosecutor General following the execution of a British-Iranian national accused of spying. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak described the killing of Ali Reza Akbari as callous and cowardly. Iran's state media is reporting the British ambassador has been summoned to Iran's foreign ministry, which is accusing Britain of meddling in their national security. But Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says the government will temporarily withdraw its ambassador and that they're considering further action.
When I found out earlier this morning from the officials in Tehran that this had taken place, of course I was filled with a revulsion that I think any reasonable person would have. That is why we have taken this decisive action. That is why we've made it clear that our response will not necessarily be limited to the measures that we have announced today. We take this incredibly seriously.
At least 5 people have been killed after a Russian missile strike hit an apartment building in central Ukraine. Dnipro's regional governor says at least 27 people, including 6 children, were injured in the attack, with more people still trapped under the rubble. Moscow's missiles also hit vital energy facilities across Ukraine today. Rishi Sunak has pledged to supply British battle tanks to Ukraine to help the country retake territory lost to Russia. 5 more pages of classified material have been found in US President Joe Biden's family home in the state of Delaware. Earlier this week, his legal team admitted documents relating to his time as vice president during the Obama administration had been found at his house and private office in Washington. The US Attorney General has appointed a special counsel to investigate the matter. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Now let's get back to Mark.
Thanks, Bethany. See you at 11. It is 10 o'clock. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10 in just a moment, as rock superstar Noel Gallagher splits up from his wife of 22 years, I've got a silver lining for that cloud. In the news agenda, is it right to stay friends with an ex's family after you've broken up? Tackling those topics and many more are legendary radio and TV presenter Diddy David Hamilton, Olympic gymnast and superb broadcaster Lisa Mason, and a fantastic journalist and author, Peter Lloyd. Plus, tomorrow's papers live and uninterrupted 10 minutes earlier than everyone else at 10:20. With top Fleet Street columnist Ross Clark. That's right, Ross Clark with us at 10:20, and my amazing panel right through until 11. I want to hear from you throughout the show. Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots to get through, but let's start with my take at 10. Well, I'm very sad to hear the news that rock superstar Noel Gallagher has split up with his wife of 22 years, Sarah McDonald. What went wrong? A midlife crisis for this 50-something rocker? Don't forget, these singers are like a kid in a supermarket when it comes to available women. Has she had her fill of living with a big ego? Being top of the pops for decades will influence anyone's personality and sense of self-importance. Or perhaps she's a little miffed that he wrote the best-selling Wonderwall for his previous wife, Meg Matthews, but wrote no hits for her. It's a real shame, as they're both clearly very gifted and charming people. They've brought 2 lovely kids into the world, and we wish them well. But as every door closes, another one opens. Enter, stage left, Noel's feisty brother, Liam. These 2 boys have been at war for years now. Brothers at war. Does that sound familiar to you? Anyway, moving on. The press report that there was no love lost between Liam and his brother Noel's now ex-wife, Sarah. By all accounts, Liam couldn't stand her. So with her out of the picture, is a reunion on the cards? Dare we dream? With a winter health crisis, an NHS on its knees, the economy in free fall, debt through the roof, the cost of living crisis in full flow, isn't this the precious bit of good news that we need for 2023? Isn't it time for an Oasis reunion. A nationwide tour. A new album. Just think of it. Just savour it. And the creative energy that these two men have when they get together is the best. The closest thing we've got to Lennon and McCartney. And unlike the Beatles, both of these men are mercifully still with us, and therefore that dream is within our grasp. Liam, Noel, bury the hatchet and let's make this happen. It's a marriage made in heaven. What can we give you to encourage you? Cigarettes and alcohol? Or do you want to roll with it? Come on, boys. You don't live forever. You're rock and roll stars all around the world. We'll be popping bottles of champagne supernova if this comes off. Morning glory beckons, lads, and afternoon and evening. Your country needs you. Don't look back in anger. I think I got through most of the back catalogue there. Let's get reaction now from my all-star panel. I'm delighted to say, the broadcasting legend Diddy David Hamilton. We've got Olympic gymnast and broadcaster Lisa Mason, and journalist and political commentator Peter, the lovely, fabulous and irreplaceable Peter Lloyd. Look, let's have a think about this for just a moment, if we can, Lisa Mason. Oasis, get back together. It's what the country needs.
Do you know what? I can sit here and say that's not really my genre of music, but I do have their songs in my playlist. I'm not going to lie. I grew up on it. My brothers absolutely loved them. You can't deny their chemistry. I mean, everyone's kind of made a comeback at some time, and they are legends. And like you said, they're the closest things we got to, you know, Paul McCartney and that. So I think it's inevitable, no?
It's got to be. Peter Lloyd, you cannot get through a night of karaoke with at least one of their hits not being sung.
Agreed. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing. I reckon if there's going to be one Mancunian band that needs to reform, it's not Oasis, it's the Smiths. They're one of the greatest bands of all time, and they are surely due a reunion. Let the Gallagher brothers fight amongst themselves for a bit, you know? I want to see Morrissey back on the stage with Johnny Marr and the other two guys and, you know,
I don't know who that is. I don't know who they are.
Peter Lloyd, hasn't Morrissey...
That's why we need a Smiths reunion right here.
Peter Lloyd, hasn't Morrissey been cancelled for having unfashionable political views?
Yeah, that's exactly why he should reform with the other band members and reform the Smiths. Come on, I want to see them on the summer festival stages, the main stages this summer.
Who better to ask than a man that plays hit music 5 days a week, if not more? It is music broadcaster, top DJ, Diddy David Hamilton. And Oasis, they're a bit special, aren't they, David?
Well, I think the Gallaghers will be a little bit unhappy today because Manchester City got beaten and they're big Man City fans. So your news may cheer them up a bit. I'm not sure that it cheers me up that much, to be absolutely honest with you. I don't know whether they've got anything left in their locker. I know that they were enormous Beatles fans, but despite your big build-up, they're not the Beatles, are they? I don't play their records much on my radio show, to be honest with my Boom radio show. Get a little plug in there. I mean, they're okay, but I think, you know, not for me. And I think if our panel are absolutely honest, we did have a little chat in the green room beforehand. I don't think they're enormous Oasis fans, really.
No, I'm not. No.
Let me tell you, I love Oasis so much that my brilliant producer, the lovely Abigail, has been out to Tesco, I believe, and she's got me Oasis Summer Fruits, or what's this one? Citrus Punch. And you do get a bit of punch from those boys. That's the point, though, David, isn't it? That they've got a bit of personality in a very bland industry now.
Well, yeah, they certainly have personality, but what does that have to do with their music? You know, I mean, I think they're okay. I mean, I quite like Wonderwall and I quite like some of their stuff, but they're not absolutely my top of the pops, to be honest with you.
David, do reunions work?
They can do. You've sort of hit me with that one. It's come up on my blind side, trying to think of people who have got back together again.
Take That.
Huh?
Take That.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I didn't like those groups like Take That.
Listen, it's
boy bands. I know you'll find this hard to believe, but boy bands don't actually excite me very much.
No, well, I don't blame you. Peter, why has this marriage ended, do you think?
Well, I mean, you know, I kind of hold my head in my hands because I think, why on earth would a rich man with a fortune of £60 million marry? I mean, knowing what the divorce courts are like in this country, knowing that 42% of marriages break down, there were 113,000 divorces in the UK last year. Why on earth would he run the risk? Why would any rich man run the risk of getting married and potentially losing half his fortune, his home, access to his kids, his car, half of his pension, 40% of his future earnings for 5 years? It's ridiculous. Please, rich men, just don't get married anymore. I don't, not I do.
No, you can't say that.
Please.
If you believe that, no one will ever get married.
There's things as prenups, and that's what I'm saying.
Prenups don't work, I'm afraid. They're not worth the paper they're written on.
Well, love, you've got to believe in love.
He's going to lose a lot of money. £60 million. She's going to take him to the
Yeah,
clinic.
but he's
And
had
you know what?
20
She'll get
years.
it.
He's had 20 years with her, and they got kids.
It would be cheaper.
Ultimately, you can't sit there and say, after 20 years and kids with this woman, that she deserves nothing.
Well, no, she could have something.
No, right, OK, so chances are she's still raising the kids when they split.
But
so you
he's
can't...
raising the kids as well, so...
When they split, so they're going to have joint custody?
Well,
50-50?
that's the thing.
We
Chances
don't know.
are he won't get...
I don't know. I'm a fan of Noel's, but if I know Noel, the only thing he's raising is a pint of Stella Artois at his local boozer. Lisa, why do you think the marriage has ended? I really, you know, my heart goes out to them. She's a very beautiful and accomplished lady. I consider him to be a music god, a great songwriter. So why didn't it work out, do you think?
I mean, who knows? People either grow together or they grow apart. You know, that's 2 whole decades together. They've had a whole life together. And I just think to myself, she could have killed him and been out on good behaviour in that time, to be fair. But you don't know.
Do you think he's
don't
got...
they?
Lisa, do you think he's going through the change? He's 55. Has he got the male menopause?
Who bloody knows? I don't know. It happens, you know. Relationships, like I said, you either grow together or you grow apart. I think marriages are looked at very differently now, and not how they were. And I think that people get into marriages and they think, well, I can just get divorced instead of kind of working on things. You know, marriage takes work. Every relationship takes work. And it's easier just to get a divorce and then worry about your finances than actually worry about the commitment that you've made together.
Peter, Lisa was saying to me earlier in the green room that marriage nowadays is largely a financial arrangement, not a romantic arrangement. People nowadays are getting married mainly for financial reasons. That's what you said.
Well, yes,
I
listen,
so.
I do know Mrs. Hamilton well, and I know she's mainly with you for the money, David. Could you tell me the
I was just a child bridegroom.
That would do it. What is the secret of your success? How long have you been with lovely Mrs. Hamilton?
Yeah. How long have you been with your wife?
Well, I think it's... I've got a feeling that it is our... I should know this. I think it's our anniversary this year. And I think... no, I'm pretty sure it is. And I think it's 30 years.
Wow.
And how the hell she's put up with me for all that time, I don't know. Thank God she likes my record collection.
Well, listen, she is... so I've heard. I've heard it's very big, especially those LPs. Listen, we will return to this conversation. My brilliant panel are back at 10:30 for the papers. But next up, we've got top Fleet Street columnist Ross Clark with his take on tomorrow's front pages. They are next.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind. And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. As always, on a Saturday, an early look at tomorrow's papers, 10 minutes before everyone else at exactly 10:20. And let's have a look at what we've got. We shall start with the Sunday Telegraph, hot off the press, courtesy of Mescana. Well done, Mescana. And we've got Starmer. I will slash nonsense bureaucracy in the NHS. Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, has vowed to slash mind-boggling NHS bureaucracy. As he said, the service must either reform or die. Sounds like one of my monologues. The Labour leader cautioned that well-meaning reverence for the health service has supplanted reality, adding that it must not be seen as off-limits for criticism. Also, school strikes put vulnerable pupils at risk. Striking teachers will put vulnerable kids at risk. The Children's Commissioner has warned, as she said, schools must not be allowed to close again. Also, girl 7 critically ill after church shooting. This is the most awful story. A 7-year-old girl was left critically ill in hospital after a gunman opened fire on a funeral mass near one of London's busiest train stations in Euston. We've got The Independent as well. UK hits Tehran with sanctions after execution of British Iranian. A shocking story which you'll have heard coverage of in our bulletins, courtesy of Bethany Elsey. Also, Johnson for PM plot splits warring Tories. A bitter split has emerged among Conservative plotters over how best to restore Boris Johnson as leader of the party. A move to empower the party's grassroots in order to pave the way for the former Prime Minister to return has been dismissed by a rival camp of allies. But supporters hit back as they predicted he would be the Conservative Harold Wilson. He will serve 2 distinct terms, say backers. Well, let's get reaction now from one of my favourite journalists in the country. He writes for The Spectator. He writes for The Telegraph and The Mail. He's got more gigs than I have. It's Ross Clark. Hi, Ross.
Good evening, Mark. Hi.
Ross, thank you for giving up a chunk of your Saturday to look at tomorrow's papers. Very interesting tone set by the leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer. I will slash nonsense bureaucracy in the NHS. He appears willing to criticise the sacred cow that is our health service.
Yes, isn't this remarkable? Because on most elections, Labour are just happy to sit back and say, isn't the NHS wonderful, and aren't the Tories evil for wanting to privatise it, sort of repeating that age-old lie that the Tories are going to privatise the NHS. But Keir Starmer, he's sort of broken away from that, and I mean, he's written a piece in the Sunday Telegraph, a comment piece, essentially saying, look, let's be honest, it's a long, long time since the NHS could really claim to be the envy of the world, and it needs reform. And he specifically says, its money is not the only problem. It sort of needs bureaucracy dismantling, as you say. And he's got two sort of big ideas, really. He's rather scathing about the role of GPs as the gatekeepers to the NHS. And as we know, it's been very, very difficult for people to get timely consultations with their GPs ever since COVID. And what Keir Starmer is saying is well, why should GPs act as sole gatekeepers to the NHS? I mean, if you've got a problem with your foot, why can't you approach a foot specialist directly? If you've got a pain in your lower back, why can't you contact a back specialist directly? And he's also saying wants to dismantle the GP system, whereby ever since the NHS was founded in 1948, GPs have been private contractors. I mean, they've essentially been self-employed, and that part of the NHS has essentially been private all along. And what Keir Starmer is saying all the burden of GPs running practices, it's dissuading young doctors from wanting to go into GPs, that side of the NHS, and well, let's turn them all into employees. Now, he's not wanting to do this overnight. He says, over a period of years, as GP contracts come up from renewal, we'll switch people over, and so that GPs are all employees of the NHS. I'm not sure that will go down entirely well with all of them, because, of course, although there is a lot of faffing around with bureaucracy if you're a GP partner, there's also an opportunity to make more money, and so particularly rural practices which have the self-dispensing, they're overseeing the pharmacy angle of it all. There's far greater opportunities for making money than if they were solely employees of the NHS. But yes, it's really, Labour, I think they're making a pretty serious attempt now to be the next government. They know they've got to sort of put ideas on the table, and Keir Starmer's doing just that.
Indeed so. He's noticeably more patriotic. He talks about how much he loves the country. He does interviews in front of the Union flag, which used to be considered a cancelable offence if you're a Labour leader. He's been talking up Brexit as well. His latest slogan is "Take Back Control," which is a Brexit term. He's talking tough on the NHS. To be blunt, is he trying to sound more right-wing in order to attract more voters?
Well, he realises if you're going to win an election, you've got to set up your camp on the opposition's ground, and that's what he's trying to do. And I think a lot of the NHS is also driven by Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, and he's one of Labour's rising stars, but he's also a cancer patient. And he suffered from cancer, and a lot of his sort of ideas seem to come from his personal experience of having to wait weeks and weeks to get scans done and so on. And, he's talking very passionately from that angle. And, I think he's really someone in the Labour Party to watch. And certainly, Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting and politicians like that, they do not frighten Tory voters in the way that Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell and so on did. And yes, set up your camp on the opposition's territory, and that's how, of course, Tony Blair. Remember Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister. He, had a go at reforming NHS, and remember he said, "I've got the scars on my back from trying to do it." And he said, well, at the end of his time, he said, "Well, the only thing I regret is not going further in reforming public services." So Keir Starmer's maybe taking a note from Tony Blair on that.
Although briefly, if you can, Ross, I just wonder whether he really is Tony Blair 2.0. This guy flip-flops, doesn't he? He campaigned for Jeremy Corbyn to become Prime Minister. He's got this terrible 1970s idea of a state-sponsored energy company investing our borrowed billions on flaky renewables. He's irredeemably woke. I think he's more Corbyn than Blair. And do you really buy this tough talk when it comes to the NHS? If he gets into number 10, is he really going to stand up to the medical unions, who are, after all, his constituency?
Well, this is the thing, is standing up to the unions is not something Labour really does. They are Labour's paymasters. And as Tony Blair found out, you try and stand up to the unions and they bite back. They can withdraw their money from the Labour Party coffers. And if the unions withdraw their money, there's not all that much left, to be honest. But you're right. Keir Starmer is not Tony Blair, and Tony Blair was, his whole manner was that of, a lot of people said, this guy is a Tory. Really, he's a Tory in Labour clothes. Whereas Keir Starmer, I think, is more of a Labour man. Really, he's not such a good public performer. He's got sort of unfortunate, sort of rather tedious, whining, nasal voice, which sends a few people up the wall. He's not somebody who's got the sort of reach on policy, I think, that Tony Blair had as well. But you look at the polls, and he's in a very, very strong position. If he can just sort of hold on, win over those centre ground Tory voters, he's going to form the next government with a pretty good majority.
Come and see us again soon, Ross. Ross Clark, the brilliant journalist there. He gave us an overview of the Sunday Telegraph and the Independent. Well, next up, I've got the Sunday Express, the Observer, the Mirror, the Star and the Sunday Times. And there's some hot stuff, let me tell you. See you shortly.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. It's just gone 10:30, so it's time for this. Yes, at this time every Friday, Saturday and Sunday, a comprehensive look through all of the papers. And let's start with the Sunday Times. And they have Johnson had credit facility worth up to £800,000 whilst in Downing Street. This is a story from Harry York and Gabriel Pogrund. Boris Johnson secured a credit facility of almost £1 million with the help of a distant cousin to fund his life in Downing Street. He gained the backing of Sam Blythe, a Canadian businessman and relative, who also gave Johnson and his wife Carrie free use of his villa in the Dominican Republic. It's normally available to rent for up to $5,000 a night. Johnson said all arrangements had been properly declared and he did not need to register the holiday because it was a personal benefit provided by a family member. Well, there you go. Is that a scandal? You tell me. Windsor peace talk plan ahead of coronation. Insiders discuss bringing warring brothers together, but insist both must be flexible. Also, teachers vote to strike next month. OK, next up, we've got the Observer. Cabinet split over NHS pay, piles pressure on Sunak. The Sunday Express, sex assault during riots at migrant centre. A migrant centre worker claimed to be the victim of a sexual assault during a riot at Britain's largest immigration removal camp. Security guards were threatened with kidnap and murder as gangs of Albanians, Vietnamese and North Africans engaged in brutal turf wars. Some brave detainees tried to keep the peace and protect staff as mayhem broke out at the Harmondsworth site in Hillingdon, West London. But one staff member suffered a broken finger whilst others, fearing for their safety, locked themselves in offices to avoid attack. Sunday Mirror now. Yet another COVID scandal. Tory donor tycoons £4.5 million to destroy PPE. A Tory donor's firm that was paid £11 million to deliver PPE is now getting almost £5 million to incinerate it. Quite literally burning cash. The Independent now. UK hits Tehran with sanctions after execution of British Iranian. And Johnson for PM plot splits warring Tories. The Sunday Telegraph. Starmer, I will slash nonsense bureaucracy in the NHS. Girl 7 critically ill after church shooting, and school strikes will put vulnerable pupils at risk. And last but not least, the Daily Star Sunday. The only wraith is Essex. Dancing on Ice skater Joey Essex is losing his cool with a well-annoying ghost buddy who haunts his home whilst he's trying to chill out. You couldn't make it up. Who'd have thunk it? And those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now from three good friends of mine, my panel tonight. We have David Hamilton, we have Lisa Mason, and we have Peter Lloyd. So let's have a look at some of those big stories. And Peter, if I could start with you. A lot of Boris stories floating around. Johnson had credit facility worth almost £1 million whilst in Downing Street. The Independent, Johnson for PM campaign, splitting the Tories. This man won't go away, will he? He's like malaria.
No. Yeah, or herpes, which I've never had, by the way. But
well, the thing is, you have fun getting herpes, don't you?
See, the thing with Boris is, this is really interesting because if you look at these two, these two front pages, they are actually linked. So there are murmurs, of course, that Boris is going to try and make a comeback into number 10 and resume his role as Prime Minister. And here we have the press, which, let's face it, is infiltrated with activists, not journalists, trying to scupper his chances before they even start. I mean, you know, we could have a whole debate on whether Boris should come back as PM, but this is a really clear example of them planting seeds, you know, getting in with kind of press attacks to undermine any potential return to number 10.
Yeah. I just wonder, Peter, whether the Tories, or some Tories, have Boris derangement syndrome. They won't let it go. He's a godlike figure. He did do some great things. He had that landslide victory in 2019. I thought he did the country a favour by keeping Jeremy Corbyn out of number 10.
Absolutely.
He ended our Brexit hell, and some consider him to have been quite decisive in relation to the COVID-19 vaccine rollout, plus Ukraine, of course. But this is a guy who limped from one self-inflicted political crisis to another. And you just wonder, if he came back, there'd be more of these stories like this line of credit in the Sunday Times.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it would be futile if he tried to come back. I think the opposition to him throughout all of the institutions in Britain is so great that they would just destroy his chances before they even started. And that's really sad, because if the British people would elect him and want him to be Prime Minister again, then that should be the case. But I don't think that the institutions in place would even allow that.
So many of my viewers love Boris and they want him back.
I mean, personally, I think he was underrated, and I think he had a very difficult time at number 10. You know, he was only there for a few weeks, and then we had COVID and there's everything else. It was not a great time to be Prime Minister of Britain, let's be honest. And I do think he was underrated. And I think when you're a Conservative politician, it's difficult to navigate the press at the best of times. But with Boris, a lot of people seem to have a very particular dislike.
Well, they do. That's it. He's a Marmite figure, the ultimate example. David, the narrative around Boris's return would presume that Sunak's doing a bad job, and I'm not sure that's the case.
No, I think he's doing quite a good job. I mean, quietly, he inherited a very, very difficult situation. And it's a bit like when John Major came in after Margaret Thatcher. She was a very positive, very strong personality, which worked for a while. Then, in the end, people got fed up with her, a bit like Boris. And then along came mild-mannered John Major. And I think this is much the same. I think where Boris is concerned, there's more chance of Oasis making a comeback.
Right, yeah, well, that's probably the mic drop of the night, actually, that line. I mean, do you think Boris even wants this? He might lose his seat at the next election.
It's hard to know what he wants, isn't it, really? I think his seat is by no means safe, is it?
No.
I think they have said that they might try and find him a safe seat. But I don't know. He can make an awful lot of money outside of politics now. If people are going to pay Theresa May as much money as they're paying her to make speeches, imagine what Boris can earn, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I can't read his mind or know what he wants to, but I sort of feel there's no going back. And I think to change tack now, I think we've got to stick with Rishi.
Well, it's my view that shares in Rishi Sunak are too low, but I'm not sure everyone watching agrees. Time will tell. He's got 2 years.
I think no matter who's doing it, I'm sorry to say, I think the Tories have had it. They've had a long run, and I think it's time for change.
Well, we'll be discussing that on tomorrow's show, because tomorrow night's big question is as follows. Do the Tories need a break from power? That's not my view, but the view of former Tory Health Minister, former Tory Chancellor Kenneth Clarke. We'll debate that tomorrow night in The Big Question. But how about this story in the Sunday Express, Lisa? Sorry to give you such an awful story. Sex assault during riot at migrant centre. We've got to get on top of this problem, haven't we?
Does that surprise me? No, it really doesn't. I think that this is something that happens a lot more than, you know, people like to admit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're going to have these stories come out, and I don't think it's ever going to be stopped. It's just people love to take advantage of people that are in a worse situation than them, and it's a control thing and power, I think.
Yeah, it's a true shocker, absolutely tragic based upon those allegations, and of course a disgrace as well. How about this story from the Sunday Telegraph? I'll stay with you, Lisa, if I can. You've got a child, haven't you? How many children have you got?
2.
You've got 2 kids. What ages are they?
I have a nearly 18-year-old and a nearly 6-year-old.
6-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So that 6-year-old wants to stay at school.
Yes.
I assume the 6-year-old was impacted by school closures during the pandemic.
Well, no, she hadn't started at that time, actually.
Well, that was lucky.
And if she had her way, she'd probably want to stay at home with me all the time because it's a nightmare waking her up in the morning. If I put her to bed at 7 or if I put her to bed at 9, she still struggles in the morning. She's only 6. But yeah,
Mrs. Dolan has the same trouble with me.
Oh yeah, I bet.
There's no morning glory round at our house, let me tell you. But Lisa, I'm glad that your youngest daughter avoided an interrupted education.
Yeah.
But we don't want it to start now, do we?
No.
School strikes put vulnerable pupils at risk. That's in the Sunday Telegraph. And of course, this ties in with the story on the front page of the Sunday Times. Teachers vote to strike next month.
Do you know what? I work in schools. And honestly, I will always sit there and say, I want to just hug some of the teachers sometimes.
Yeah.
It is so demanding. I do after-school clubs, and sometimes I can come out of an hour session and I'm like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Like,
your brain is fried.
Oh, frazzled, because it's so difficult. And ultimately, I believe that there's a lot of lazy parents. And a lot of parents send their kids to school because, you know, they don't have to do the work.
Yes.
And a lot of teachers are not just teachers. They are teaching these kids to go to the bathroom properly, to tie their shoes, to read, not just read and write and do maths. And it's a stressful job.
And sometimes feed them as well. They turn up to school, they haven't had breakfast.
And there are a lot of kids in school that their main meal will be that main meal that comes at school. A lot of kids are struggling, especially in this, you know, how things are now and the living crisis. Food is so expensive. And like I said, there are so many kids that go into schools and that is their main meal. So if they are not going in schools, they're not eating. And a lot of these kids, I've taught children that if I'm in a session with them and they're absolutely sweating, I'm like, are you okay?
Yeah.
They're like, my house is so cold because they can't afford to put their heating on. So a lot of the time, schools is a safe environment. However, it is a lot of work for these teachers. And as much as it is bad to be going on to strike, I can understand why they would be, because it is such a demanding job and it is very difficult. And people think, oh, well, they get 6 weeks off in the summer holidays. A lot of these teachers do not get 6 weeks off. They're still working. They're still doing session plans. They go in weeks before the school opens, and it is non-stop.
Peter, what do you think?
I think they're going the wrong way about it. I do sympathise.
Yeah.
But instead of striking and harming children's education right after COVID, where loads of children were negatively affected, especially really young children, they should be demanding that schools stop being overspill centres for social care.
Yeah.
Strip it right back. Keep schools to education, not feeding, clothing, mental health care. None of that. Teachers should teach. They shouldn't be social workers. That's what needs to change.
But there needs to be more people in the schools and there needs to be more jobs available, because these teachers are looked at. You know, they are mentors to these kids. They are more than just a teacher, and they need support with that.
But you know what? Those children have got parents.
Yes, and I agree with that.
At least one parent. And I think a lot of this is parents need to step up and stop putting so much responsibility on schools. It's not schools' responsibility to raise the children of Britain.
Which is why I said there's a lazy generation. This is, you know.
Amen to that. Look, I've got some massive headlines coming. Don't go anywhere. And in the news agenda with my panel. But what do you think about staying in touch with an ex's family? Is that the thing to do, or is it a bit creepy? We'll discuss that, plus more headlines after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online, this is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight, and have a look at the Sunday Times fascinating front page story. And yes, it's about the royal family. The headline, Windsor Peace Talk Plan Ahead of Coronation. Windsor Peace Talk Plan Ahead of Coronation. Insiders discuss bringing warring brothers together but insist both must be flexible. David Hamilton, we've deliberately stayed off Prince Harry for the last 3 hours because I think the public have had enough of this story.
Yes.
But you do have something valuable to add.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think, obviously, this story, this is a very good idea if it happens.
Yeah.
But I just had a thought about Harry and Meghan, and I thought that in their relationship, there is a winner and there is a loser, and this is a problem. The winner is Meghan, who, when they first met, was a little-known actress and is now arguably the best-known woman in the world. Yeah. She's a multi-millionaire, and she's back living in her own country. And the loser is Harry, who has lost his family, his royal connections, his military connections, and his friends, and is living in another country. Yeah. So this, I see, is the problem. One is a winner, and the other one is a loser. But the thing about Harry is he has gained a woman that he loves and two beautiful children and a therapist. But sadly, it hasn't made him happy. Yeah. And if you were in that situation, I mean, any of us, you've just got married, not long been married, you had two beautiful children, you were in the Californian sunshine, what would you want to do? Chill out and have a great time. But he's always in litigation. Yeah. Always in a fight. You know, who wants to live like that? Life is too short. Yeah. So, you know, lighten up and enjoy life.
But hurt people, and he's clearly hurt. This man
I know.
has so much trauma that he you probably, like you said earlier on, the therapist's probably not doing a great job, but, you know, hurt people, and I think he's just crying out for something that he's not finding, obviously.
But my point is, I think that the situation is fine and suits her, but it's not good for him.
Granted,
and
yes.
in the long run, you know, I don't think it may not work out.
Well, it's going to fizzle down at some point, isn't it? Everyone's going to get tired, aren't they?
This relationship has got coercive control written all over it in great big capital
Red flags.
neon flashing letters. Coercive control. I mean, it's textbook. She's isolated him from from his family. She's isolated him from his military connections and his, you know, his other royal duties. And he's now warring with his relatives, who he was close with his entire life.
Yeah.
You think
Why
that
is
is very questionable.
Why has he let it happen?
And also, if you look at her relationships with her family, she only gets on with her mother. She has broken relationships with every relative apart from her mother.
Correct.
So there is a common thread here with the isolation and, you know...
Very narcissistic.
It is very narcissistic. But, of course, she's an actress, so is it anyone's
I do think David has asked the question of the night. Why did he let it happen? Why has he let it happen?
Sometimes people got goods.
Do you know what?
They got some goodies.
Can I be frank?
Please.
You know what it is? Hypnotised by vagina.
That's what I'm saying, the goodies.
What?
The goodies.
HPV? I thought that was a virus.
He is hypnotised
She's
by
got some good goods
When you
there.
said you were frank, you kept to your word.
Honestly, he is just so starstruck by her ability and her beauty, and she is very beautiful, that he has just lost all sense of reality. And he has allowed himself, he has really given her...
everything.
All power over him and his life, which is so dangerous, because what happens is people manipulate that, they abuse that.
Does he wake up one morning and just think, what the hell have I done? Is that what's going to happen?
so. We
does
just
the spell,
don't know.
does the spell end? What happens to coercive control?
Well, she will eventually leave him, and they'll get divorced. And then I predict what will happen is he will then come back to this country with his tail between his legs. There'll be a big family reunion.
I hope not.
And everybody will
But won't he miss
forgive him.
her vagina?
And she will be the and she will be
Yeah,
the
but she would have denied him access to the vagina.
David,
Well,
what
yeah,
happens
it's
to
from the
vagina?
fade out,
president
the fade
of the
out
USA.
stage.
Blimey.
Fade out stage, they start
Spare me.
isolating it.
Let me just offer a note of defence to Meghan Markle, because this is a young woman who fell in love with a prince. She's been through a lot, certainly as a serving royal. Many would argue that she loves her husband and that she wants only the best for him. So, look, everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's the nature of the show. Let's move on to a slightly connected story. And this is a woman who was jailed this week for contacting her ex's dog. The 38-year-old broke a non-molestation order after messaging a Facebook account set up in the dog's name. Apparently, this was going too far, but it begs the question, is it OK to stay in touch with your ex's family, with your ex's friends, and even your ex's pets? Peter?
No, it's weird. The best thing to do is just to be civil and nice. Keep it friendly, but only civil. Going either way is wrong. You don't want to be too friendly with them. You don't want to be hanging out with them. That's odd. You don't want to be warring with them, because that's just drama you don't need. Keep it civil. It's the best way to do it.
I wonder about that, because what's sad, Lisa, when a relationship ends is that you might have grown close to your mother-in-law or your father-in-law, and now you're never allowed to speak to them again.
Well, my first question is, who makes a Facebook account for their dog? I mean, that's just weird, to me anyway.
Very strange.
I'm not a dog person, so I can't relate.
Too much time on your hands.
I think it's a very difficult situation because, I mean, obviously my ex, I have a child with them, so I still speak to the family because it's my child's
And
family.
the family like you, I'm told.
They do.
They
of
love
course
her.
they do. I'm a lovable person.
Love her.
But yeah, I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard because obviously when you choose to move on, it can be very difficult. I'm at the point now, obviously, where if I was a single person still, then I could quite happily just, you know, go and visit. But I'm also very aware now that I'm in a relationship that I can't do that, and I wouldn't want to put my partner through that.
Well,
because it's...
briefly, David, only got a couple of seconds, but what do you think?
All I was going to say was, if she got in touch with the dog, did she do it on the dog and bone?
She most certainly did. And there you go. We ended on a classic one-liner from Diddy David Hamilton, broadcasting legend. Thank you to Lisa Mason and to Peter Lloyd as well. Loved having their company. Loved having your company as well. It's been a busy 3 hours. The People's Hour. If you'd like to be a star on the People's Hour, drop me a line, mark@gbnews.uk. I'm back tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Welcome back. You're watching GB News. I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the newsroom. A 7-year-old girl is in life-threatening condition in hospital after a suspected drive-by shooting in North London. A total of 6 people have been injured in the attack, which happened outside a funeral in Camden. 4 women aged 21, 41, 48 and 54 are being treated in hospital. The 48-year-old has suffered potentially life-changing injuries. A second child aged 12 was taken to hospital but has since been released. Police are appealing for any witnesses and say no arrests have yet been made. The Royal College of Nursing says it will announce a new round of strikes in February if negotiations don't progress by the end of this month. Nurses from more than 70 NHS trusts in England are already planning to walk out on the 18th and 19th of January in a dispute over pay and patient safety. The union says double the number of nurses will be asked to take part in the action next month if it goes ahead. This comes as the government are trying to pass new legislation requiring minimum service levels on strike days. The UK